The silence of Orion. The first sign that the Orion Arm was dying was not an explosion. It was silence. Admiral Theorin of the Volari Coalition had spent 3 centuries in service to the Concordance fleet. She had witnessed border skirmishes, trade wars, even the brief but brutal collapse of the Dracari Imperium. Empires fell with noise, with fire, with screaming channels and desperate pleas for reinforcement. But this was absence. The Eltonin relay flickered once across her command display and then vanished. Not destroyed, not jammed, simply gone. The star system icon dimmed to gray, its telemetry dissolving into static. Attempting reconnection, her communications officer said, frills twitching with unease. Theorin did not respond. Her 4 eyes remained fixed on the hololithic projection suspended above the bridge. One by one, neighboring systems followed. Red became gray. Signal strength fell to 0. The Orion Arm, outermost spiral of the galaxy and home to nearly a third of Coalition space, was going dark. Admiral, navigation whispered. Gravitational distortions detected along the Perseid drift. Not natural. They are patterned. Patterned. Theorin felt a cold tightening beneath her armored chest plates. Magnify. Space unfolded in magnified clarity. What had once appeared to be harmless fluctuations resolved into something deliberate. Corridors of warped space-time advancing inward like cracks spreading across glass. And within those distortions were signatures. Fleet signatures. Thousands of them. Identification. No known configuration matches. Energy output exceeds Dracari War maxima by a factor of 8. The bridge fell quiet except for the hum of overtaxed processors. A final transmission burst across the emergency band. The Eltonin defense ring. Broken. Fragmented. They don't maneuver like ships. Stars help us. They fold space itself. The feed cut mid-scream. Static. Then nothing. Theorin straightened. Alert the Coalition. All sectors. Immediate mobilization. We face an unknown armada of unprecedented scale. Within hours, the Perseus Gate became the rally point for every warship the Coalition could muster. Sleek Rylox carriers, Volari Lance frigates, even ancient Arkelian dread platforms were dragged from ceremonial orbit. And still, it did not feel like enough. They saw the enemy for the first time near the Eltonin corridor. The Veil did not resemble ships. They were vast obsidian geometries, angular structures that seemed partially submerged in folded dimensions. Light bent around them. Sensors struggled to define their edges. They did not broadcast. They did not threaten. They advanced. Open fire, Theorin commanded. Coalition beams lanced outward in coordinated fury. Plasma arcs, gravitic torpedoes, antimatter spreads, enough firepower to crack moons. The Veil did not evade. The first Coalition volley struck, and space folded. The weapons curved, bent, and collapsed into miniature singularities before touching their targets. Then the Veil answered. No flash, no charging glow. A distortion rippled outward. Theorin watched 3 capital ships compress inward like crushed metal sculptures. Hulls folded. Reactors imploded. Crews died without debris, without flame. Entire squadrons vanished. Retreat pattern Sigma, she ordered. Too late. A second distortion wave expanded across the battlefield. Fleet formations fractured as space-time itself twisted. Ships collided with phantom gravitational gradients. Warp drives overloaded. In less than 12 minutes, the Perseus defensive screen ceased to exist. Theorin's flagship survived only because it had been positioned at extreme range. She stared at the empty void where hundreds of ships had been. They did not pursue, her tactical officer whispered. Indeed, the Veil formation did not accelerate toward fleeing survivors. They continued inward. Steady, unstoppable. System after system dimmed over the next cycles. Refugee flotillas streamed coreward, engines burning beyond safety thresholds. Emergency councils declared evacuation protocols for entire civilizations. And across galactic networks, a phrase began circulating. The Orion Arm has fallen. Fear spread faster than the invaders themselves. There was one silence that troubled Theron more than all others. Sol. Humanity's system lay within Orion's breadth. A young species by galactic standards, volatile, innovative, and notoriously resilient. They had fought brutal wars among themselves before ever reaching the stars. Yet Coalition long-range scans showed minimal fleet deployment from human space. No emergency declarations. No distress calls. Have the humans withdrawn? One counselor demanded during a hollow summit. Are they fortifying only their homeworld? They have not requested assistance, another added sharply, nor offered it. Theron remained quiet. She had fought beside humans once, decades ago against pirate enclaves in the Carina Reach. They were reckless, yes, emotional, but never passive, and yet Sol remained quiet. As the veil consumed outer Orion, rumors multiplied. Perhaps humanity had fled into deep space. Perhaps they had sealed their borders. Perhaps Deathworld courage failed when extinction loomed. The final Coalition stronghold assembled near the inner approach to the Arm, an improvised defensive ring around the Helios transit nexus. It was not enough, but it was everything they had left. Theron's damaged flagship joined the line. Refugee vessels cluster behind them, millions of lives waiting on a miracle. Long-range sensors flared. The veil had arrived. Obsidian forms emerged from warped corridors like phantoms rising from black water. They stretched across astronomical units, their numbers impossible to measure accurately. Energy signatures building, tactical, said softly. Theron felt no fear now, only grim acceptance. Transmit to all channels, she ordered. Hold formation. We stand for Orion. The first distortion wave struck the outer ring. Stations folded inward. Defense grid shattered. Ships died without even debris to mark their graves. Theron watched the Helios nexus flicker, its stellar bridge destabilizing under gravitational assault. And still, no signal from Sol. The veil advanced through the wreckage, inexorable as entropy. As her flagship's shields began to fracture, Theron allowed herself one final thought. The galaxy had feared pirates. It had feared rogue empires. It had feared civil war, but it had never prepared for something like this. A force that did not conquer, only erased. Helios went dark. The Orion Arm, once vibrant with billions of lives and 1,000 cultures, became a widening corridor of silence. And across the galaxy, governments began drafting extinction contingencies. Because Orion had fallen, and nothing was coming to save it. The secret beneath Sol. While the Orion Arm burned in silence, Earth did not. Beneath the lunar surface, far below the sea of tranquility, Command Vault Aegis stirred to life. The chamber had not been built for ceremony. There were no flags, no grand windows displaying Earthrise, no polished marble. Only reinforced alloy walls layered with radiation shielding and signal dampeners. The room existed for one purpose: continuity of species. Admiral Elias Ward stood at the center of the vault's circular command well, watching a projection of Orion collapse. Gray system after gray system. Helios, Perseus, Eltonin, each one marked with a timestamp of extinction. They've breached the inner defensive band, said Director Amara Iqbal, head of strategic foresight. Coalition resistance has effectively ended, or not at once. Confirmation. Multiple quantum buoys went dark within seconds of each other. Space-time sheer consistent with prior veil incursions. The word had been classified for decades. Veil. Humanity had named the anomaly long before the galaxy knew it existed. 52 years earlier, deep-range telescopes stationed beyond Pluto detected something impossible. Entire dwarf systems at the fringe of intergalactic dark had vanished. Not destroyed, not supernovae, simply excised. The data had been buried under layers of clearance so deep that even most governments were unaware. Project Aegis Dawn had begun that same year. Coalition channels are requesting aid, Iqbal continued. They don't know what they're asking for. They just know they're dying. Ward studied the projection in silence. Earth had not mobilized publicly. No grand fleet departures. No emergency declarations broadcast across subspace. To the wider galaxy, humanity appeared hesitant, perhaps even afraid. That illusion had been intentional. Status of outer bastion arrays? Ward asked. Operational, replied Fleet Marshal Han Zhao from the lower-tier console. Jovian shipyards have completed deployment cycles. Saturn IX platforms are powered and cloaked. Kuiper Line remains undetected. Ward allowed himself a slow breath. For decades, humanity had prepared not for conquest, but for extinction-level war. The Jovian moons housed shipyards carved into their crusts, hidden beneath electromagnetic interference storms. Entire fleets had been assembled inside giant magnetospheres, invisible to conventional scans. Asteroids hollowed into ammunition vaults drifted in silent orbits beyond Neptune. Even Earth's own sun had been fitted, quietly, with energy siphon lattices capable of feeding weapons no species had ever fielded. Humanity's paranoia had been mocked once. Now it was about to be vindicated. A new alert chimed across the vault. Veil signatures entering former Helios corridor, Zhao said. Trajectory suggests continued advance coreward. They're not consolidating territory, Iqbal murmured. They're clearing it. Ward turned toward the raised dais at the center of the chamber. Embedded within was a crystalline interface, the primary control for Aegis Dawn. Predictive models? He asked. 87% probability the Veil reach Coalition core systems within 4 standard weeks, Iqbal answered. 93% probability of total Orion Arm sterilization. And Sol. A pause. Eventually, Ward rested his hands on the interface. Humanity had debated this moment for half a century. Reveal too early, and the Veil would adapt before their full capabilities were mapped. Reveal too late, and Orion would be irrecoverable. They had chosen a wait. Every battle fought by the Coalition had provided data. Every distortion wave refined human countermathematics. Every lost fleet fed Aegis Dawn's predictive engines. Cold. Calculated. Necessary. Admiral, Zhao said quietly. We are approaching the threshold. Ward nodded once. Open deep spectrum channels, he ordered. Prepare for phase revelation. Across the solar system, systems that had slept for decades awakened. Near Jupiter, enormous shadows detached from the planet's storm bands, Titan-class dreadnoughts sliding free of concealment fields. Their hulls were layered in adaptive plating and quantum interlock shields designed specifically to resist space-time shear. Around Saturn, ring fragments shifted, revealing embedded defense platforms unfolding like mechanical petals. Beyond Neptune, the Kuiper Bastion ignited. Thousands of autonomous strike craft powering up in perfect synchronization. And at the heart of it all, in orbit around Earth's moon, the flagship Resolute Dawn emerged from phase concealment, its spine-mounted stellar lance slowly charging from siphoned solar energy. Back in the vault, Iqbal watched the activation cascade with something close to awe. They think we've been hiding, she said softly. Ward allowed the faintest smile. We have. An incoming transmission flashed on the auxiliary display. Coalition Emergency Council. The feed was chaotic, multiple species overlapping in panic. If Sol can hear this, any assistance. The Helios nexus is gone. This is extermination. Ward stepped into the projection field, allowing his image to resolve across their fractured conference. The chamber quieted. Coalition representatives, he said evenly. This is Admiral Elias Ward of the United Earth Defense Command. Shock rippled across alien faces. You are alive? One counselor demanded. For now, Ward replied. And so are you. We require immediate reinforcement. You require something else, Ward interrupted. Time. He gestured. Behind him, the holographic image of Sol shifted. The quiet yellow star flared brighter as dozens, then hundreds, of fleet signatures appeared around it. Gasps echoed across species lines. You withheld this? Another leader whispered. We prepared, Ward corrected. The display expanded outward, revealing fleet after fleet powering up across the system. Thousands of ships, dreadnoughts the size of cities. Swarms of strike platforms forming geometric formations with machine precision. Silence fell over the coalition feed. Ward's voice remained calm. For decades, we observed anomalies beyond the galactic rim. We calculated the probability of an extinction-level incursion. We chose not to panic the galaxy. You let Orion burn, someone accused. Ward's gaze hardened. We learned how they kill. A beat. And now we will teach them how we survive. He turned from the projection and faced the command well. Signal all battle groups, he said. Zhao's fingers hovered over the activation key. Admiral, he asked quietly, are we certain? Ward looked once more at the fading gray of Orion. No, he said, but they are closer to certainty than we are. He nodded. Execute phase revelation. All fleets go loud. Across the solar system, concealment grids collapsed. Human drives ignited. And for the first time since the war began, Sol answered the dark. The day the stars answer back. Admiral Theorin did not expect to survive the next 3 minutes. Helios was gone. The defensive ring had collapsed into drifting debris and warped radiation scars. What remained of the coalition fleet formed a fractured crescent around the refugee cluster. Civilian ships huddled together like prey animals awaiting the final strike. Her flagship shields were down to 32%. The Veil advanced without haste. Obsidian geometries slid through distorted space, their edges phasing in and out of visible reality. No formation changes, no signal chatter, just steady annihilation. Distortion wave building, tactical whispered. Theorin straightened in her command cradle. All remaining ships brace for impact. Redirect auxiliary power to refugee shielding. There would be no retreat this time. The Veil's energy signatures peaked. Space began to bend. And then, reality tore open. Not with the smooth, silent fold of the Veil, but with violence. A seam of white-gold light split the void above the refugee cluster. Then another, and another. Hundreds of fractures radiated outward, forming a lattice across the battlefield. The Veil distortion wave faltered. Something punched through. Out of the ruptures emerged shapes unlike any coalition vessel. Angular but purposeful. Layered armor, plating glowing faintly at the seams. Massive spinal structures running the length of hulls like drawn blades. Human ships. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Thousands. They arrived in perfect geometric formation, occupying high orbitals and flanking vectors in less than 2 seconds. Smaller craft streamed between them in disciplined swarms. Theorin's bridge fell silent. Identification confirmed. Her sensor officer breathed. United Earth Defense Command. A transmission cut across all frequencies. Clear, steady, amplified beyond jamming interference. This is Admiral Elias Ward of Sol. Coalition forces hold position. Repeat, hold position. The Veil responded first. Their formations shifted for the first time since the war began. Obsidian constructs reoriented toward the newcomers. Energy distortions intensified. Ward's voice remained calm. All battle groups. Aegis formation. Lock distortion anchors. From the human fleet, a web of shimmering nodes deployed, small, rapidly spinning devices flung outward in synchronized arcs. They embedded themselves in local space-time, projecting stabilization fields. The Veil distortion wave struck and met resistance. Space still bent, but it did not collapse. Human shields flared brilliant blue-white, interlocking between vessels like overlapping scales. The wave dispersed across the lattice, bleeding energy harmlessly into vacuum. A collective gasp echoed across coalition channels. They blocked it, someone whispered. The human fleet did not pause. Titan batteries, mark primary constructs, Ward ordered. At the center of the formation, 3 colossal dreadnoughts rotated slowly, exposing forward spinal apertures. Energy drawn directly from Sol through quantum-entangled relays surged along their hulls. For the first time, the Veil hesitated. Then the human ships fired. Not beams, not plasma, relativistic kinetic lances, dense tungsten carbide spears accelerated to near-light velocity. They crossed the battlefield in fractions of a heartbeat. The first Veil construct attempted to fold space around the projectile. It succeeded partially. The spear curved, then detonated. Human payload algorithms triggered microsingularity bursts at the point of highest spatial compression. The folded space collapsed inward violently, tearing through the Veil hull. The obsidian geometry fractured. For the first time since their arrival in Orion, a Veil ship broke apart. Fragments spilled into normal space, bleeding exotic radiation. Shockwaves rippled across every open channel. They could be damaged, Theron breathed. Human strike swarms surged forward, exploiting the breach. Autonomous drones maneuvered with predatory precision, targeting exposed seams in Veil armor. Coordinated volleys struck the same points repeatedly, overwhelming adaptive defenses before they could recalibrate. The Veil answered with concentrated distortion beams, collapsing 3 human frigates into twisted debris. But the formation did not falter. Losses within acceptable parameters, a human tactical voice reported flatly. Acceptable. Theron felt something unfamiliar stir beneath her fear. Hope. Coalition forces. Ward's voice cut in again. Target vectors uploading to your systems. Focus fire where indicated. Her console lit with human targeting data. Precise weak point analyses calculated in real time. Transmit to all remaining ships, Theron ordered. Follow human coordinates. Coalition weapons fired once more, this time with purpose. Where their earlier volleys had been desperate, these strikes were surgical. Another Veil construct ruptured under combined fire. The obsidian armada began to shift backward. Not retreating, reassessing. Admiral, human tactical reported, Veil attempting network recalibration. Adaptive algorithms increasing by 12%. War nodded once. Release, countermeasure, echo. From behind the main fleet, a cluster of smaller vessels deployed crystalline transmitters. Pulses of encoded interference rippled outward. Not random jamming, but invasive logic patterns. The Veil formation stuttered. Energy spikes misaligned. One construct fired prematurely, its distortion beam slicing through an allied ship. They're disrupting their coordination, Theron realized. Human counter-AI had penetrated the Veil command lattice. The impossible enemy, the silent erasers of systems, were being forced into confusion. A final transmission burst across open galactic frequencies. "This is Sol," Ward declared. "Orion stands." The words carried beyond the battlefield. Refugee ships picked them up. Distant listening posts echoed them. Across the galaxy, where despair had settled like ash, something shifted. The Veil made one last concentrated push, distortion fields overlapping in a massive forward surge. Ward did not flinch. "All fleets," he commanded quietly. "Advance." Human ships accelerated directly into the oncoming wave. Interlocked shields flared to maximum. Titan-class dreadnoughts unleashed sustained stellar lances, continuous beams of sun-fed plasma that carved incandescent scars across Veil hulls. One by one, the obsidian geometries broke apart, and then they withdrew, not in disorder, but undeniably backward. Warp corridors opened behind them. The Veil retreated from Helios. Silence fell over the battlefield once more. But this time, it was not empty. Human vessels held formation, engines humming steadily. Coalition survivors drifted among them, battered but alive. Theron stared at the tactical display, where Veil's signatures had once filled the void. "They fled," her officer whispered. "For now," Theron corrected softly. A new reality settled across her thoughts. Orion had not been saved by miracle. It had been saved by preparation. As human ships began coordinated rescue operations among refugee clusters, Theron opened a private channel to the Sol flagship. "Admiral Ward," she said, her voice steady for the first time in weeks. "The Coalition acknowledges your intervention." Ward's image appeared, calm, composed, eyes already scanning new tactical projections. "This isn't over," he replied. Theron glanced. The tide, that became a storm. The Veil did not flee far. They regrouped beyond the shattered perimeter of Helios, just past the edge of Coalition's sensor reach. Long-range probes tracked their distortion signatures reforming into tighter, more defensive geometries. They were adapting. They always adapted. Inside the command core of the Resolute Dawn, Admiral Elias Ward watched the tactical projection with measured calm. The initial engagement had confirmed what Aegis Dawn simulations predicted. The Veil could be disrupted, damaged, even destroyed, but only through relentless pressure. Enemy recalibration rate has increased, Fleet Marshal Zhao reported. Their distortion harmonics are shifting to counter our anchor fields. Ward nodded. Expected. Deploy Phase 2. Behind the main human formation, a second wave of vessels advanced, sleeker ships designed not for direct assault, but for infiltration and interdiction. Autonomous scouts slipped into warped corridors left by retreating Veil constructs, mapping their pathways in real time. We're not letting them reset, Ward said. Collapse their supply geometry before they can reorganize. The Coalition fleets, still battered, hovered at the edge of engagement range. Admiral Theron's flagship maintained position near the refugee convoy, its hull scarred but operational. A secure channel opened between her and Ward. You pursue them? She asked. Yes. They erased half an arm of the galaxy. And if we wait, Ward replied evenly, they erase the other half. Theron studied the human fleet through magnified optics. Their formations were not celebratory, not triumphant, disciplined, prepared. You fight like this is not your first extinction threat, she said quietly. Ward's gaze did not leave his displays. It isn't. Human history had been written in catastrophes narrowly survived. Ice ages, pandemics, world wars. Survival was not a gift to them. It was a skill honed across millennia. The counteroffensive began without fanfare. Human strike groups penetrated Veil, withdrawal corridors, and detonated prepositioned singularity charges along predicted anchor points. Entire sections of folded spacetime destabilized, severing the Veil's retreat paths. For the first time, Veil constructs were forced into conventional space without optimal geometry. Titan-class dreadnoughts capitalized immediately. Stellar lances fired in coordinated salvos, carving through exposed hull planes. Relativistic spears followed, detonating within structural cores before distortion fields could fully compensate. The Veil responded with concentrated counterwaves. 2 human cruisers folded inward, lost in silent implosions. Ward did not hesitate. Advance through the gap, he ordered. The human fleet pressed forward. Coalition commanders watched in astonishment as Sol's armada executed maneuvers with machine precision. Shield lattices shifted dynamically. Targeting solutions updated faster than Veil adaptations could stabilize. They are learning from them mid-battle, Theron murmured. Human counter-AI units had begun mirroring Veil distortion mathematics in real time, feeding predictive patterns back into fleet coordination. Every Veil adjustment narrowed their own options. Within hours, the battlefield transformed. The Veil were no longer advancing. They were reacting. At the heart of the fractured armada, a singular construct dwarfed the rest, an immense, multi-layered core vessel radiating distortion energy on a scale previously unseen. Primary command node identified, Zhao reported. Probability 91%. Ward studied the behemoth. Disable it, he said. Not destroy. Disable. A formation of heavy assault ships broke from the main line, shields overlapping in tight interlock. They endured repeated distortion strikes, armor buckling under gravitational shear, but held formation long enough to deploy anchor arrays directly around the command construct. Spacetime stabilized violently. The Veil core vessel faltered, its folding geometries forced into rigid dimensional constraints. Titan lances fired simultaneously. Instead of shattering the construct, they targeted propulsion nodes and energy conduits with surgical precision. Explosions rippled across the obsidian surface. The core vessel drifted, crippled but intact. The remaining Veil ships began full retreat, abandoning their central node. They're withdrawing completely, Zhao confirmed. Across coalition channels, disbelief turned to stunned silence. The unstoppable force that had erased Orion was fleeing. Human recovery craft surrounded the disabled Veil construct, projecting containment fields. Theron's voice returned over the secure link. "You capture it?" she asked. "Yes. To study. To understand." Ward turned to the assembled commanders within his bridge. "We end this not just by winning battles," he said. "We end it by ensuring they cannot repeat this." Hours later, as the battlefield settled into debris and drifting wreckage, a broadcast pulsed outward from the human fleet, clear across all frequencies. "This is Sol Command. The Veil advance has been halted. Orion systems will be reclaimed. Joint defense coordination protocols will follow." There was no declaration of dominion, no demand for submission. Instead, encrypted data streams accompanied the message: shield harmonics, anchor field schematics, counter-distortion algorithms, shared freely. In the days that followed, coalition fleets reorganized under human tactical guidance. Early warning arrays were seated along the arm's outer rim. Joint command structures formed, blending species who days earlier had expected extinction. On a restored colony world once marked gray on Theron's map, power grids flickered back to life. Children looked up at unfamiliar ships passing overhead, sleek human hulls glinting in starlight. "Are they our protectors?" one youngling asked. Theron, standing beside the settlement's rebuilt comm tower, considered the question. Human vessels were already moving outward again, pursuing Veil signatures beyond the galactic fringe. "No," she said softly. "They're our allies." Far above, aboard the Resolute Dawn, Ward observed the growing network of shared fleet signals across Orion. The galaxy had feared the arm was severed. Instead, it had hardened. Humanity had not emerged to rule the dark, only to ensure no one faced it alone again. Beyond the rim, the Veil retreated into deeper shadow. But now, the shadow knew it was being watched, and the tide that had turned to Helios was no longer a ripple. It was a storm,